Hey everybody, welcome to episode 47 of the AskDAP show, where we answer your Volkswagen Audi questions. On this episode, we talk about, do octane boosters do anything? Will maintaining your new car void your warranty? And when's the best time to upgrade your intercooler?
Marty Kinkar via shopdap.com says, what is your take on fuel additives? Things like VP Octane Booster. The drag racers do use them, but will it add power to the modern Mark 7 TSI engine, or is it harmful instead? Does the ECU even it out instead and there are no gains?
All right, so Marty, let's start with fuel additives. So the fuel additive component to this is much more broad than the octane booster question. So fuel additives, it really depends on what your purpose is. There's a company called BG. They make a product called 44K. It's meant for cleaning fuel systems, cleaning injectors, cleaning a lot of things in that system. And I have had good experience with that over the years. So I recommend that product to a lot of people because it is a good product. But it's not really intended for power. So if you're looking for a way to raise power on cars, octane boosters are not a great way to try and get more power out of your car. And here's why. The fuel in your car by itself does not dictate the amount of power it puts out. The reason why some higher performance cars require race fuels or high octane fuels is actually based on the way they're tuned and not the fuel. So the fuel is really just the necessity to make the power, and the fuel doesn't equal the power, because if the car wasn't tuned to accommodate or require that type of fuel at a higher octane, it's not going to change anything. Higher octanes actually just burn slower, so they have less issue with knocking, engine knock, which if you have or pre-ignition, so that's when the mixture in the combustion chamber as the piston's coming up will ignite from the pressure in the cylinder before the spark plug hits, and that way obviously the piston is starting to go down when the actual spark plug does fire, which obviously is super bad for the engine because it's not operating properly. So that is the main reason why you would have higher octane fuels, is to prevent pre-ignition and then detonation, because that can be really damaging to engines. So if you took a really low horsepower car and put, let's say, race fuel in it, it's not really going to make a lot more power. It's not going to change the way the engine is tuned and make it a much faster car. So octane boosters are not something that I recommend for most people. And also, and I think this to be true, and you'd have to look into this a little bit further, as far as I know, dollar for dollar, an octane booster relative to the cost of upgrading the fuel, let's say if you had 87 and you put an octane booster in it to bring it to 93, the cost to run additives to get you to 93 outweigh the cost of the actual fuel itself. So that's just what I believe. I'm not sure if that's 100% true. So anybody who has any comments about that, make sure you leave it in the comments below if you have more details about the pricing component on fuel additives.
Richard via shopdap.com. Hi there. I have a 2009 CC with about 140,000 on it. I replaced the rear main seal a few months ago, and after that I thought it was having some fuel issues, so I replaced the high pressure fuel pump and the module. I kept getting the P2293 code after changing both components. I hooked my car to a VACCOM yesterday, and all it said was fuel pump intermittent and random misfires. Cleared all the codes this morning. CEL came back on with cylinders 1 and 3 misfires and random multiple misfires. After reading some of the above comments, it's looking more like an injector than a low pressure fuel pump in the tank. Your thoughts?
All right, Richard, so your issue, P2293 on a CC with 145K. Let's start with this. The fact that your misfires on 3 different cylinders, first I would check the misfire counter to make sure that it's not consistent on one specific cylinder. You would need a VACCOM to do that. To track down if you have a single cylinder. Generally, if you have an injector failure, it's going to be on generally one specific cylinder. The other thing I would say is at 145K, it could be a carbon buildup issue with a cold start misfire. I don't know. I don't really have more details specifically from you about if this is a cold start misfire or if this is a constant misfire. But diagnosing further into that would be an option. And I'm also making the assumption, and maybe this was not the right assumption to make, that you've already looked into ignition coils and spark plugs on that. I assume you probably have. If you haven't, you should always start there. Check out the video we have talking about that, and you will want to swap coils and plugs around to see if the misfire moves if you haven't replaced them already. Aside from that, that would be your misfire related stuff. The other thing is, you said you had your rear main replaced. I wonder, did you replace the PCV valve when that happened? Because a vacuum leak can also often result in a poor running condition and misfires. So vacuum leaks often result in misfires, so you would want to make sure you have a good PCV valve on the car, as well as, I know there are some circumstances where intake manifolds can cause leaks, which would also result in a misfire code. But I think the intake manifold, don't start with that one. That's probably the least likely. And then going into the fuel pump issue, the P2293 fault should be, and that's a kind of a generic code, but the actual fault should be for the N276 valve, which is actually the solenoid valve that controls the high pressure fuel pump. It's mounted on the top and actually controls the flow for high pressure fuel. So that's what that fault is pointing to. The one problem I have, and you said you have a new high pressure pump and you have a new fuel pump module. So obviously you can rule those out, assuming you use quality parts on there, either let's say Bosch, which we offer a Bosch high pressure fuel pump, or the genuine one. So if those are good quality parts and those are fine, I would say the next step would be to first see if it's having a fuel supply issue sporadically, which you would have to pull the lines off, the low pressure lines off, to see if maybe you had a sporadic issue where the low pressure pump was not supplying enough fuel, which is why it thinks that that valve isn't operating properly, because the electric pump in the tanks don't have any sensors on them to determine when they're not flowing properly. So it might result in a fault for the high pressure fuel pump solenoid, even though it's a low pressure pump that isn't delivering enough fuel. Aside from that, I've heard of people who have replaced all those things and still have those problems. The next thing you would want to look at would be the fuel pressure sensors. Though there are two of them in that system, I believe. There should be one on the fuel pump itself, or on the one part of the rail, and then one part of the other. One of them is just a high pressure sensor, and then one of them is just a standard low pressure sensor. So that would be the route to go with those, but all of those issues definitely require more tracking down to determine what's going on, and hopefully you can resolve your issue.
Trevor Johnson via email says, I recently bought a 2016 GTI, my first VW, and during the purchasing process I was pressed hard to buy a maintenance plan. I ended up not getting one due to many reasons, but mainly because I enjoy working on cars and doing the basic work myself. The dealership blatantly told me it was a bad idea and I could void my warranty even with an oil change performed by myself. Was this salesman blowing smoke up me, or is there more to it? Something I'm not considering. This could apply to all basic maintenance such as oil changes, brake pads, etc. I appreciate the help.
Trevor, so let's start with this. First, congrats on the new car, and thanks for saying you will consider us for your purchases. I really appreciate it very much. About your service contract. So I'm certain that the person who was trying to sell you this maintenance contract was in finance. That is their job, is to sell you stuff. Pretty much just flat out, that's their job, is to sell you things. Was he being dishonest by saying that it could potentially void your warranty? Not technically, I guess. I would say kind of, but not technically. Working on your own car is not something that will void your warranty, but if you were to do something improperly, it could potentially have warranty implications in the future. The biggest thing that I always tell people, and I think I've covered this before, but I can't really recall, is if you're maintaining your own vehicle for warranty purposes, you should always keep meticulous records on when you changed your oil, and keep receipts with the parts you used, oil change dates, mileage, all that stuff, so that if anything happens, because let's say, for example, the old 1.8Ts forever ago had oil sludge issues, which it was mostly B5 Passats had the oil sludge issues on those cars. But at the time, you would have to show oil change records to be able to get that covered under warranty. And that extension was like, you know, I think, I don't know, 100,000 miles, but like these were higher mileage cars that had potential for a warranty extension for an oil sludge issue. But if you can't produce proof that you properly maintain the car, you're not going to be eligible for that refund or for that repair. So that would be the main reason why I would suggest always keep meticulous records. But in regards to maintaining your own car, there actually is nothing about maintaining your car that voids your warranty. That's actually the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act that went on way back when, which is the thing that people always point to and say that that's why you're allowed to modify your car, which isn't true. But the intent of it was for people who were manufacturers who were trying to void warranties for parts not purchased from them. So that way you could go to, let's say, someone like us or someone like Napa or AutoZone or whoever and buy parts from them and install them on your car and still have your warranty intact, let's say an oil filter or something like that. So that's the deal with maintaining your car. Enjoy your new car and good luck and happy modding.
VW Rook via VW Vortex. Is there an appropriate time to install an upgraded intercooler? For example, between stage 1 and stage 2 ECU tunes or after a stage 2 ECU tune? Vehicle in a hot summer environment, temps in the high 90s, high humidity, 60-ish regularly. No track runs, daily driver in traffic, sporty performance driving when conditions allow, so vehicle does get pushed. I've watched your informative videos on what intercoolers are and how to install them. I'm just not clear as to when to install them.
Okay, so before we go into that intercooler info, let's actually talk about this. If you're not familiar with how intercoolers work or what the purpose of upgrading, check out this video that I shot that talks about kind of intercooler 101 so you'll understand what we're talking about. The answer to your question simply is the fact that there is no perfect time to upgrade your intercooler. Any time would be an okay time to upgrade your intercooler, and here's why. Upgrading your intercooler is a way to defeat heat soak. All turbo cars are going to have potential to have heat soak. We talked about that in that video 101, so if you don't know what that is, make sure you check that out. So anytime you're going to have heat soak would be a fine time to upgrade your intercooler. Now, for me, I would say it really is relative to what your goals are and what your intent is with the car. So let's say you want to keep your car fairly stock and you're doing a couple mods. Let's say you do something, an intake, and then you want to do something else that's going to give you a little more performance, but you don't want to do, let's say, software yet. An intercooler might be a decent option because you can upgrade that. And while potentially there could be some warranty implications, it's pretty unlikely. So that would be a solid mod to give you more power under those heat soak situations. I generally recommend dollar for dollar to go through the steps, kind of like what we talked about in our top 5 power mods video for the Mark 7 GTI. And really it went from a tune being number 1. So if you're looking for a tune for a Mark 7, you can check out the info we have on Unitronic. But then next would be tune, and then downpipes and intercoolers were there as well. So intercoolers are going to be up there as far as a mod, but they're more expensive, harder to install. We recently had somebody who came to us asking me about it, and he wanted to go with one of the piggyback intercooler setups that actually goes in the front instead because it was easier to install. I don't feel like it's actually much easier to install. I think it's probably pretty close relative, but I understand that taking off that core support and everything can be pretty intimidating. I would suggest probably go in this route. This is just my personal opinion, and how I think most people probably should go down the road would be first stage 1 software, then probably intake, then downpipe in stage 2, then probably intercooler would be next. That it would be the succession of power mods to get you the most bang for your buck at each given time. You even could cut out the intake and go straight to intercooler instead. At that time, it really doesn't matter. But again, heat soak is always going to be the enemy of any turbocharged or supercharged car. So getting rid of heat is always going to give you power benefits, regardless of what position you are in your mod stage. So hopefully I answers your question and gives you a little more preparation to make that decision. Oh yeah, I'll link to our Unitronic front mount intercooler here for anybody who's looking to purchase that.
Dominic Washington via YouTube. Does VW charge you for their pre-owned warranty?
All right, Dominic. So do you have to pay for warranties or does VW charge for a warranty? Let's start with this. This question was framed in the sense that this gentleman was shopping for a car, and I assume it was maybe mentioned in the negotiation of the deal on the car. So here's the deal. Dealers pay for certification of cars. They have to pay Volkswagen to certify the car. And here's the other key to this. Now, the car he was looking at was a really new car with really low mileage. But when you're comparing a certified pre-owned car, let's say it has 50K on it. And I think this is really important because I think there's a lot of value for shopping for certified pre-owned cars, but you have to kind of be aware of what you're shopping for to understand why the value exists. Let's say you're buying a car that has 50,000 miles on it. There are a lot of requirements from VW for it to qualify to be a certified pre-owned car. Now, again, they still have to pay to certify the car, but they also have to do a lot more things to the car to actually meet certification. And that's things like brakes. Brakes have to be within a certain percentage of tolerance, otherwise they are required to replace it. I can't remember what it was. I want to say it's 40%, but that might even be too high. It might be 30%. They also have requirements for tires. They also have requirements for checking interior stuff and overall just belts, other things like that. So a lot of times when you're shopping for used cars, this is something that most people are not aware of, but basically you're at odds with a lot of times the person you're shopping for a used car for. And some people don't have this philosophy, but most places you shop for used cars would. They're trying to make the most money they can off of selling the car. You're trying to get the best car you can for the least amount. That means they're going to do the least amount of repairs possible to sell you this car. Now, sometimes that means you end up with a car that has a lot less tread life on the tires than you would care to have when you're just buying a car. That might mean a year from now you need brakes and tires. So that's pretty common on used car practice, which you can say shame on them and whatever. You can have your opinion about that. But the reality is that that's what the whole market does. And so everybody has to continue to do that to be price competitive in the market. So it's really all the pressure from the customers have pushed that into be a problem and then push down the value. And there probably are some people out there who sell used cars who make sure that they're meticulously maintained. The problem is that doesn't generally have any value to most customers, because when you're shopping for a car, most people aren't educated enough when they're shopping to know who does do that and who doesn't do that. So that would be why it doesn't exist. So the value of buying a certified car is because they're held to that standard by CPO warranty by VW. They're required to do that, so you know the car you're getting, not only having the warranty above and beyond what the factory warranty was, but you now have a car that you know had XYZ done, or at least it's in a much better shape than most of the other used cars probably in the market. So that's the real benefit of CPO cars. I think they're a great option for most people and generally a good choice. Thank you for watching episode 47 of the AskDAP show, where we answer your Volkswagen Audi questions. If you have any comments about the questions answered in this show, be sure to leave it in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more like it.